guess while you guys are out in space, we're here on Earth debating on, whether it's science versus God, and
Right.
and this debate has been going on for a long time. Does science and the Bible contradict or complement?
Right.
And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that, or where do you stand?
Well, I felt, I guess I felt growing up comfortable in my faith that God was there and that the Bible was true. But there were parts of the Bible, Genesis, where I struggled. I didn't know really the veracity of what I was reading. And it didn't threaten my faith, but I couldn't say I was comfortable with, how the two came together. And as I got into the Air Force and met some very scientifically minded Christians, I found that, wow, the Bible is so robust. For example, the story of the flood. If you really dig into what the Bible says about the flood, there's so much more detail there than what most of us were taught in Sunday school, which is, of course, what I thought about and what worried me. Well, it rained for 40 days, flooded the earth. Where did the water come from? But then I went and read that account, and it says the fountains of the great deep were opened, and the waters came forth. And I've read quite a few different theories on how that could have happened in the worldwide flood, and how it can explain everything from the way the continents were formed to where the frozen mammoths in Siberia and Alaska came from. So for me, I think the Bible is the best answer scientifically. When we look, the two are going to match. All science is run through a filter. I mean, there's no way to approach science without some kind of bias. And anyone who says that's not true, I think, is deceiving themselves. So the key as Christians is that we do honest science, that we really look at the data and present our theories. And yes, there may be people who don't want to hear it because they dismiss everything that, hints of anything associated with the Bible. It can't be scientific, but that's not true. Science is a search for truth, and so is philosophy. It's just in different spheres. So what we want to know as Christians is what really happened. And we think that when we discover that, we're going to see it lines up perfectly with God's account.
So science does take some leads then from the Bible, or is, because of course science is based on evidence and fact, and
Sure.
and like you mentioned about the flood, and there
Yeah.
are other kind of things in the Bible that would science take its leads from that? Because I know that they make their own theories after that, but where does that begin? Like, what is that process like?
Well, I guess, the way I see it is most of the Bible is narrative. It's a history. And history itself is a pursuit of truth. What happened? We try and document the truth. We hear about historical revisionism and the way that people have manipulated history in order to control people in the present. So I think as we go and look at the narrative of the Bible, we can see a grid. For example, it says there was a global flood. So now as we go back and look at the fossil record, if we take that as a presupposition, could there have been a global flood, and we look back, then now we come up with a completely different explanation for where the fossil record came from than someone who believes there was never a global flood and that the earth is 4 billion years old, and that that all this happened by present processes extrapolated over long periods of time rather than in a giant catastrophic event. So I think that the Bible gives us a place to start and to go from there. But we always see science is refining itself, right? If we go back 100 years and look at what was considered the top medical practices of the time, many of them would seem barbaric to us today.
So are we evolving?
Are we evolving?
Yeah.
No, I don't believe so. I think that all the genetic information is there, and what my belief is, what Darwin saw on the Galapagos Islands was something that was within the species. It was microevolution. It was probably a fluctuating change in the species that was based on the environment. But the thing was that all the information was already there. Nothing was added to the finch, would be my understanding of what likely happened there. And I don't see the evidence for macroevolution. Where have we ever seen the crossover species? Where is it in the fossil record? For me, I think one of the greatest challenges with the evolution is the fact that for 150 plus years, the greatest scientific minds have not been able to replicate in a laboratory environment the creation of life from non-life. And yet that's an absolutely essential part of evolutionary theory. So if with all our intelligence we can't make that happen over that long of a period of time, with all the resources we have available, can we really believe it happened by chance?
Something to think about.
Yeah.